The wind didn't sound right that night. It wasn't the kind that warned you. It was the kind that whispered, like the earth itself was holding its breath. A white mare tore through the darkness, hooves striking sparks off the dry prairie stone. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you are watching this video from. We love hearing from you, and always read every message. The rider, a woman, leaned low, her hair soaked, her dress shredded to ribbons. Behind her, thunder rolled. But it wasn't just thunder. Something else moved in the storm. The moon flashed once between clouds, enough for Jace Maddox to see her. A stranger riding like the devil himself was giving chase. Her lantern swung from the saddle horn, casting broken halos across the open plain. Jace froze at the gate to his ranch, one gloved hand gripping the post. He'd seen storms roll in fast before, but never carrying someone like her. The mare stumbled. The rider fell. Dust rose. Rain began. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then, a gasp. Jace ran. When he reached her, she looked up through tangled hair, eyes wild and desperate. Her lips trembled like she'd been running from more than the weather. "Please," she rasped, voice barely there. "Don't let them find me." Lightning split the sky, close enough to make the ground tremble. He turned, scanning the black horizon. But there was nothing. No riders, no sound. Just the echo of her words hanging in the rain. Jace swallowed hard, rain streaking down his jaw. Whoever she was, whatever she'd brought with her, it had already changed everything. And somewhere behind that wall of rain, something was coming. Jace lifted her into his arms, her body light but trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. The rain came harder now, a sheet of silver cutting through the dark. His boots sank into the mud as he carried her toward the barn, his heart thudding faster than the thunder behind them. The lantern swung in his hand, lighting flashes of her face. Dirt-streaked, frightened, beautiful in a way that made him forget how to breathe. He pushed the barn door open with his shoulder. The hinges groaned like an old ghost. Inside, shadows bent and twisted under the flickering light. He laid her on a blanket of hay, knelt beside her. "You're safe here," he said, though he wasn't sure it was true. Her eyes fluttered open. "Safe?" she whispered. "No one's safe out there tonight." He frowned. "Who's after you?" She didn't answer, only reached for the necklace at her throat, a small silver locket smeared with mud. Her voice shook. "If they find me, they'll take me back. And I can't go back, not again." The way she said it, "not again," sent a chill crawling up his spine. Jace stood, scanning through the cracks in the barn wall. Lightning lit the plains like daylight for a heartbeat, and he swore he saw movement far off, figures on horseback, just before the dark swallowed them again. He turned back to her. "You're staying put," he said, his voice firm but quiet. "Whatever's coming, they'll have to go through me first." For a moment, she stared at him, uncertain, afraid, and maybe, just maybe, starting to believe him. The storm clawed at the barn roof, each gust sounding like the world trying to tear itself open. Inside, the lantern threw trembling gold across the wooden beams. Jace knelt beside her again, his rough hands surprisingly careful as he checked her arm, her pulse. She flinched when he touched her wrist. "Don't," she murmured. "I'm fine." He gave a quiet snort. "You're not fine. You're bleeding." She tried to rise, but the pain in her side forced her back down. Jace caught her gently before she could fall. For a heartbeat, they were inches apart, his breath warm, hers unsteady. "Who are you?" he asked softly. Her eyes met his, blue, distant, full of something like shame. "Eleanor," she whispered. Then, almost like an afterthought, "Grace." He repeated it under his breath, as if testing the weight of it. "Eleanor, Grace." She looked away. "I shouldn't have come here. You don't know what I've done." Jace sat back on his heels. "Don't need to. You were running. That's enough. Lightning lit the barn again, and for a split second, the light caught the silver locket at her throat, glinting like a secret begging to be told. She turned from him, whispering, "You should have left me where I fell." He leaned forward, voice low. "That's not how I'm built." The wind eased for a moment, just enough for silence to settle. Heavy, fragile, alive. And in that breath between thunderclaps, both of them knew the night wasn't nearly done with them yet. The wind hadn't died. It was only catching its breath. Every few seconds, the barn shuddered under its weight, the rafters creaking like an old ship at sea. Jace sat by the door, rifle across his knees, listening. The horses in their stalls shifted restlessly, ears flicking toward the storm. Something was out there. He could feel it. Behind him, Eleanor stirred. The lantern had burned low, its light trembling over her face. She watched him silently. The broad shoulders, the steady posture, the way he looked ready to fight the whole world if he had to. Then came the sound, faint, distant. A hollow echo of hooves against soaked earth. Jace's hand tightened on the rifle. He rose slowly, crossed to the narrow slit of window and peered out. Nothing but black and rain. Still, he knew the rhythm of that sound. It wasn't thunder. It was pursuit. He turned toward her. "They're close." Her breath caught. "How do you know?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. She pushed herself up, grimacing. "You don't understand. If they find me, then they won't," he cut in. His tone was calm, but his eyes burned with something fierce and unspoken. Eleanor looked at him. Really looked. The man who'd found her bleeding in the dark, now standing between her and danger he didn't even know the name of. "You shouldn't be doing this for me," she whispered. Jace stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "You needed help. That's enough." Her lips parted, as though she wanted to tell him everything right there. The truth she'd buried beneath her fear. But then lightning cracked again, and she flinched, clutching the locket at her throat. He noticed. "That thing means something?" Her eyes flickered, voice trembling. "It's why they're hunting me." The storm roared louder, but not half as loud as the silence that followed her words. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The storm outside howled, scraping against the walls like it wanted in. The lantern flickered once, twice, casting their shadows across the hay-strewn floor. Eleanor's fingers hovered over the locket, trembling as though it burned to the touch. Jace watched her. Not with suspicion, but with the quiet patience of a man who'd seen too many people hide from their own ghosts. Finally, she exhaled. "You think I ran because I was scared," she whispered. "But fear doesn't make you cross a river in the dark. Guilt does." He said nothing, only tilted his head slightly, waiting. Eleanor opened the locket with a faint click. Inside lay a folded scrap of paper, edges torn, ink blurred by water. She handed it to him. "It's proof," she said, "of everything he's done." Jace unfolded the paper carefully, eyes narrowing. It was a deed, land rights, signed and sealed by Thomas Caldwell. Half the county's property under his name, bought with forged signatures and blood money. She looked away, voice breaking. "My father trusted him. We all did. When I found out, I confronted him. He said if I wanted to protect my family's name, I'd marry him and keep quiet. So I ran." Jace's jaw flexed, his thumb brushing the edge of the paper. "You ran because you've got more courage than he'll ever have." She blinked, startled by the gentleness in his voice. "You don't even know me." "Don't need to," he said softly. "You're still standing. That tells me enough." Outside, a horse whinnied, sharp, frightened. Jace's gaze darted to the door. The storm was breaking, but something worse was coming with the calm. He folded the paper, slipped it back into the locket, and met her eyes. "Whatever's after you, it's not just yours anymore." The wind began to fade, leaving the barn wrapped in an uneasy stillness. The world outside still groaned under the weight of rain, but inside, There was a fragile calm, a pause that felt borrowed. Jace crouched near the hearth, coaxing a fire to life from damp kindling. Sparks caught, then bloomed into soft orange light. Eleanor sat nearby, her back against a post, the blanket he'd given her drawn around her shoulders. She looked smaller now, quieter, though her eyes still carried the storm. He glanced over his shoulder. "You'll need to rest. We ride at first light." Her lips twitched faintly. "You say that like I've got a horse left." He smirked, just barely. "Then you'll take mine." "I'll walk," she frowned. "You'd do that for me?" He poked at the fire, not meeting her gaze. "You're not the first soul I've pulled out of trouble, but maybe the first that thanked me." Silence stretched. The fire crackled. Rain dripped through the roof, steady as a heartbeat. Eleanor studied him, the quiet strength, the shadowed eyes. "You lost someone," she said softly. "Didn't you?" Jace's jaw tightened. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Ain't much use talking about what you can't fix." She lowered her gaze, sensing the weight behind his words. "Then maybe this time you can." Their eyes met, a flicker of something that neither dared name. The kind of look that bridges two broken souls without saying a word. He swallowed hard, then stood, setting his hat back on. "Get some sleep, Ellie." She nodded, but neither of them closed their eyes for a long time. Outside, the rain eased into a whisper, as if the storm itself was listening to whatever had just begun inside that barn. Morning crept slow over the plains, a pale light bleeding through the cracks of the barn. The storm had passed, but the air carried that heavy, waiting quiet, the kind that never meant peace. Jace was already up, packing the last of his supplies, his movements sharp, efficient. He'd been awake since before sunrise. Eleanor stirred beneath the blanket, the faint smell of smoke still clinging to her hair. She blinked, dazed for a moment, as if unsure where she was. Then she saw him. Sleeves rolled, jaw set, the weight of the world sitting square on his shoulders, and the memory returned all at once. "Are we running again?" she asked. He nodded, not looking at her. "The ground's too wet for tracks. It's the best chance we've got." She stood, her legs unsteady. "And when they find us?" Jace paused, finally meeting her eyes. "Then we don't stop." There was something final in the way he said it. Not fear, but a decision. The kind of choice that changes everything. Outside, the horizon stretched wide and endless, streaked with gold and mist. The horses shifted restlessly near the gate. Jace saddled his mare and motioned her forward. "You ride with me till the trail clears." She hesitated, fingers brushing the locket at her throat. "I never asked you to risk your life." He stepped close, eyes steady. "Didn't have to." For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. The scent of rain, the warmth of his nearness, the wild, uncertain beat of her heart. Then he swung into the saddle, reached his hand down, and pulled her up behind him. As the barn doors creaked open, sunlight spilled across the floor. Bright, golden, deceptive. Because in the distance, far beyond the ridge, the sound of hooves began again. They rode hard through the morning haze, the horses pounding across the soaked earth, each breath a plume of white in the cold. The sky hung low and gray, the kind of quiet that makes you think the land itself is listening. Jace guided the mare toward the canyon trail, narrow, winding, flanked by jagged rock and thorn bush. Behind them, the echo of hooves grew sharper, closer. Whoever followed them was closing fast. Eleanor clung to him, her fingers gripping his coat. "How far does this trail go?" "Far enough," he said, though he didn't sound sure. They rounded a bend where the river had flooded, churning brown water over sharp stone. The path narrowed to a slick ledge barely wide enough for one horse. Jace slowed, scanning the way ahead. "Hold tight." The mare stepped forward, hooves slipping once, then catching. Eleanor shut her eyes. The drop below looked endless, a blur of mist and motion. When she opened them again, she saw movement above. silhouettes on the ridge. Horses, riders, guns glinting in the pale light. "Jace," she breathed. "I see him." His voice was low, controlled, but his shoulders tensed. A rifle cracked. The sound split the air. Rock burst near the mare's legs. The animal reared, screaming. Eleanor slipped, clutching for balance. Jace caught her arm, dragging her against him before she could fall. "You okay?" She nodded, breathless. "I think so." He looked at her, eyes fierce beneath the brim of his hat. "You're not dying here. Not today." He kicked the mare forward, spurring her into the flood. Water surged around them, cold and merciless. When they reached the far bank, soaked and shaking, Jace turned back once. The riders were gone, lost to the storm's haze. For now. Eleanor met his gaze, lips trembling. "You said far enough. You were right." He didn't smile. "Not yet, Ellie. Not yet." Night found them hidden beneath a rocky overhang, the canyon walls rising around like ancient guardians. The fire Jace built was small, just enough to keep them warm, not enough to give them away. The air was heavy with the smell of smoke, wet earth, and something else neither dared to name. Eleanor sat close to the flames, her damp hair falling loose around her face. Her hands trembled as she held them toward the fire. Jace watched her from across the glow, silent, the kind of silence that carried weight. "They won't stop," she said finally, voice soft. "Men like Caldwell don't lose." Jace poked at the fire with a stick, his jaw tight. "Then he ain't met me yet." She tried to smile, but it faltered. "You don't have to do this, Jace. You could walk away, right now, pretend you never saw me." He looked up then, eyes dark and steady. "You think that's the kind of man I am?" Her breath caught. "I don't know what kind of man you are." "Maybe I don't either," he admitted. "But I know what I can't stand. A good woman punished for telling the truth." For a long moment, neither spoke. The fire cracked softly, throwing light over the sharp lines of his face, the sadness in his eyes. Eleanor felt something shift inside her. Something quiet but unstoppable. She reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. "You'll lose everything if you keep helping me." He didn't move. Just let her hand stay there, warm against his calloused skin. "Maybe," he said finally, "but some things are worth losing for." The canyon winds swept through, carrying ash and whispered promises into the dark. For the first time since she'd fled Red Hollow, Eleanor didn't feel hunted. She felt seen. The dawn came pale and cold, seeping like spilled milk across the canyon floor. The fire had long gone out. Smoke hung low, curling in faint blue threads that vanished with every breath of wind. Jace was already on his feet, scanning the ridge. Something in the air felt wrong. Too still, too clean. The kind of silence that usually comes before the world tilts sideways. Eleanor stirred, blinking the sleep from her eyes. "What is it?" He didn't answer. He just reached for his rifle. And then she heard it. The faint jingle of bridles, the low murmur of men's voices. Horses, at least 3 of them. Her heartbeat stuttered. "Jace." He motioned for quiet, his body coiled tight. They were boxed in. Canyon walls on both sides, no easy way out. He glanced at the horses, then back to her. "You ride east when I tell you. Don't stop for anything." "No," she said sharply. "Not without you." He gave her a look that was more plea than command. "You run, Ellie. If they catch me, they'll want me, not you. That's how you survive." The sound grew louder, the crunch of hooves on rock, men laughing low. Eleanor grabbed his arm. "Please, don't do this." His expression softened, that quiet steadiness she'd come to know shining through. "If I don't, you'll never be free." The first rider appeared at the canyon's mouth. Dark hat, cold eyes, gun in hand. Caldwell's men. Jace turned, brushed a strand of hair from Eleanor's cheek and whispered, "Go." She didn't move. Couldn't. Then came the whistle of a bullet, sharp, whirring past her ear, and the moment broke. Jace fired once, a warning shot that echoed through the canyon like thunder. Horses reared, men shouted. Dust exploded around them. Eleanor's tears blurred everything as she ran for her horse. Behind her, Jace's voice carried through the chaos. "Ride, Ellie! Don't look back!" And she didn't, though every step away felt like leaving half her heart behind. The world had gone quiet again. Too quiet. The gunfire had faded into the distance, leaving only the wind whispering through the canyon. Eleanor rode until the sun broke over the ridge, painting the desert gold. Then she stopped. She couldn't go farther, not without knowing. She turned her horse around. By the time she found him, the light had turned harsh and red. Jace lay near the edge of the canyon, half hidden behind a fallen log, his rifle discarded beside him. His shirt was soaked dark, the color of rust and rain. "Jace!" Her voice cracked as she ran to him. He opened his eyes, barely. A ghost of a smile found his lips. "Told you not to come back." Tears blurred her vision. "You think I'd let you die alone out here?" She knelt beside him, tearing a strip from her dress to press against his wound. He hissed, the pain sharp enough to steal his breath. "Easy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Easy. It hurts." He froze, the words sinking through him like a memory he'd been waiting his whole life to hear. His hand found hers, rough and shaking. For a moment, everything stilled. The wind, the sun, even time. Then, softly, he said it. The same words that would live in her heart forever. "It'll be over quick." But she saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't talking about the pain. He meant himself, his fight, his life, the last pieces of a man who'd given everything to keep her safe. "No," she choked out, clutching his hand tighter. "Don't you dare." His eyes fluttered. "You're free now, Ellie. That's all I ever wanted." The wind carried the words away, and for a moment, it felt like the whole canyon bowed its head in silence. The sun was slipping low when she finally stopped crying. The canyon glowed in amber light, painting the rocks in hues of fire and gold. Jace lay still beside her, his face calm now. That quiet strength still etched into every line, even in rest. Eleanor sat there for a long time, fingers laced through his, her other hand resting over the locket against her chest. The metal was warm from the sun, from her tears, from everything they'd endured. "I never wanted to be brave," she whispered. "You made me." The wind stirred, carrying her words across the canyon. Somewhere, an eagle cried, its wings cutting through the fading light. She felt it then. Not just grief, but something deeper. A pull toward everything Jace had stood for. Honor, courage, the kind of love that asks for nothing but gives everything. When the last of the daylight touched the ridge, she rose slowly. She took the deed from the locket, the proof of Caldwell's lies, and held it over the fire she'd built beside him. The parchment curled, blackened, and burned to ash. Jace had said she was free. She would make it true. She buried him beneath a lone oak overlooking the valley, the place where the sky met forever. As she packed her things, she whispered, "You'll rest here, love. I'll carry the rest of the road." Then she climbed onto his horse, his mare, strong and sure-footed, and turned toward the horizon. The wind rushed past her, wild and endless, wrapping around her like his voice still lingered there. "Easy," she murmured to the wind. "It hurts." But this time, the words came with a small, steady smile. Because somewhere in that ache was love, true, undying, and free. And as the sun dipped behind the hills, the rancher's promise lived on in the woman who would never stop riding. Years later, the people of Red Hollow still spoke of the woman who rode back from the canyon alone. Her eyes steady, her voice quiet, and her heart unbroken. Eleanor Caldwell. She never took her father's name again. Rebuilt the ranch from the ground up. The land thrived under her care, fair and honest, a place where no man's word outweighed his deed. On the hill beyond the valley, Beneath the lone oak, a simple wooden cross stood. No name carved, just a small brass button pressed into the wood. His button. Every spring, when the wind rolled down from the canyon, the grass bent low, whispering through the fields. Easy, it seemed to say, soft as breath. Eleanor would pause, close her eyes, and smile through the ache. Because she knew it wasn't goodbye that Jace had left her. It was a promise. And promises, like true love, never die. Thanks for riding with us, friends. If you want more Western love stories, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.